In this episode, an online platform that was created to help people who are interested in green chemistry research and education come together to meet, collaborate, and share resources. It's called the Green Chemistry Teaching and Learning Community. And here to give us a look at what it has to offer is Jonathan Moyer, manager of the resource for Beyond Benign. Well, welcome, Jonathan Moyer, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks so much, James. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, this new resource, the Green Chemistry Teaching and Learning Community, or GCTLC for short, which folks it becomes important because the web address is gctlc.org.
Mhm.
But this resource, Jonathan, the Green Chemistry Teaching and Learning Community, what is it?
The GCTLC is a new online community platform by the community for the community, and it's meant to be a one-stop shop for all things green chemistry education. So it's a space for educators, students, and industry partners to come together, share resources, and learn all about green chemistry, have discussions, and collaborate.
Fantastic. What for speaking, we're going to speak, by the way, folks, to folks who might be new to green chemistry, as well as experts in the field, people who are already deep into green chemistry. So this is sort of for all of you all. But let's start with folks, Jonathan, folks who are sort of new to green chemistry,
Mhm.
new to the field, curious about this resource. Um, what would you say to those folks in terms of what this has to offer them?
Yeah, absolutely. As a member of Beyond Benign, we're a nonprofit that focuses really on green chemistry education. Green chemistry has been around sort of as a concept for 30-ish years and came out of a lot of the work and pollution prevention in the US. And so throughout that time, it's gained a lot of traction in education, but it's still not widespread. So it's not, well, at least for a long time, was not a requirement for a lot of courses. And it's evident that a lot of students come out of their chemistry programs at both the sort of secondary, elementary, as well as post-secondary levels without a strong grasp of green chemistry knowledge and skills. But we know that green chemistry is very important for addressing sustainability challenges like the UN SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and being able to make better decisions when moving into the workforce, whether students go into research, industry, if they go into policy, education, academia. So having that knowledge and skills of how do I decide if something is toxic or more benign? How do I decide if it's going to cause environmental issues later? Is it more hazardous, less hazardous? What are some of those choices I can make? By giving students those skills, we can help prepare them to make better, more sustainable choices in the future. So the GCTLC is really meant to help with that process. It's about educating people about what is green chemistry, and it's helping educators bring more of that into their curriculum so they can help train the next generation of students.
You mentioned helping the educators,
Mhm.
bring that to their students. I'm curious, and I may be diving too specific too quickly here, but it's an interesting theme that's arisen in several of the stories I've done already,
Mhm.
which are the times where green chemistry, let's say on campuses, is driven actually by the students, where the students get hold of it and start sort of shaking the trees, like give this to us.
Right.
Um, what would you say to those students, if there's students out there who are, primed perhaps to be asking for that same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the GCTLC is meant as a space for anyone who's interested in green chemistry in an educational setting, and that includes student leaders too. And we want to help support those students. As someone who formerly was a graduate student and did volunteer with a student group on campus within our department, trying to bring more green chemistry into the department, student voices can be very powerful and they have a lot of potential impact to create change. Yeah, allowing them to have the space to help each other and their colleagues and their teachers and their faculty lecturers bring more green chemistry into what they do can really bring about a great amount of change. And we've seen that in a lot of different examples of student groups in different schools across the world. Students definitely can be really powerful change agents, and we want them to know that we're here to help support them through a lot of our programs as well as through the new GCTLC platform.
Terrific. We're going to get folks in a second to giving you at least a preview of some of the resources that this platform has to offer to
Hmm.
make the things that Jonathan's been talking about possible, to make it easier for people to bring green chemistry to a campus, to a classroom, develop it from there, make connections. Definitely going to get there. But as we get there, I want to mention one thing. I guess, Jonathan, it's mentioning something to the audience, which is going to kind of prime a question for you, I think.
Sure.
And it has to do with the other folks involved. So, folks, Beyond Benign is the host organization for this resource, done in partnership with the American Chemical Society. Am I right about that, Jonathan?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, in partnership with the American Chemical Society. So those are sort of the two prime partners, but close on their heels in terms of participation, excuse me, and resources they're bringing to it are other organizations like Change Chemistry,
Mhm.
and countless universities around the world that have green chemistry up and running. And the reason I mention that, again, for the audience, Jonathan has weighed in heavily on the education piece to this, but I want to make sure, Jonathan, I think, and again, correct me or add to this if you think differently, that there are threads here that lead off campus as well.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is that with the American Chemical Society, you have in that organization, it's for folks who may not know, it's the professional society of chemists in the U.S. and indeed around the world, many international members, and through them a connection. A strong connection of green chemistry to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and a lot of work in that area. Then you get to something like Change Chemistry, which is an organization that deals very specifically at the intersection of green chemistry in industry. So producers of feedstocks up through manufacturers, retailers, all the way to consumers,
Yeah.
they're looking at green chemistry through the manufacturing and consumer systems.
Yeah.
Um, and then you've got universities and all the research. I guess I'd ask you to comment how those that diversity of participants in this resource reflects the diversity of offerings in the resource.
Hmm. Yeah, great question. So, with the platform, as we were developing it, we worked closely with a committee of 19 individuals, and this is our leadership committee. This was a group of representatives from different sort of areas and sectors, as you've sort of described. So we have members within the committee from not only higher education as academics, as lecturers, as educators, also from the K-12 level, so high school
Mhm.
teachers, as well as some industry representatives. And throughout all of our discussions in how we wanted to build the new platform, we garnered their advice across all different sort of points along the way, including design, functionality, to really understand how would industry engage with academics and educators in the system. What about student leaders? What are the types of things that each of those groups are coming to the platform looking for? So we tried to really reflect that in not only the content but also the design of the site. And
Yeah.
we've done the best we can. We certainly think and hope that it's going to be a benefit to everyone. But certainly there are a lot of examples of where those different sectors and communities can intersect. For example, we do have a job board in the platform, and we're hoping that there will be a lot of industry interest in promoting many of their opportunities to up and coming students who may have a background in green chemistry or an interest in green and more sustainable chemistry in industry. So that's just one example, but there are many more as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've taken us actually exactly where I kind of wanted to go next, which is a preview of the types of offerings, the types of resources that folks might find
Yes.
at this website. And again, I don't know we want to do an exhaustive look because we want to get people to the website and have them take a look at it. But I think it's worth covering a couple to give folks a feel for what's there. You
Yeah.
mentioned one, the jobs board, that there'll
Hmm.
be listings, growing as time goes on,
Yep.
coming in from industry, and I'm sure I would imagine academia, and nonprofits as well, right? Is that,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, all of the above.
And then and then there's a forum, a community forum
Hmm.
that I'm so far from my seeing has things posted like grant opportunities.
Hmm.
Um, a really interesting exchange about people to speak about green chemistry. Both, hey, we're having an event and we want someone to come in to speak about green chemistry, or experts, participants in the community putting themselves out as I would be available to speak on certain topics. Is that
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So our forums and sort of collaboration spaces within the GCTLC are meant to be a place where people can ask those types of questions of the community. And one sort of offering that we've had at Beyond Benign over the last couple of years is something called the Green Chemistry Connections. This is a virtual monthly get together where the community can drop in. We have a few presentations and then we do breakout groups. And within those groups, people often ask questions like, how can I start a green chemistry master's program at my university? Has anyone done an undergraduate level chemistry, a green chemistry course? And what are the topics that you cover? How do you, decide what that is? Um, we've had students come in and ask, how do I start a student group? What do I, where do I begin? So what we wanted to do with the GCTLC and specifically the forum space and groups, which will be coming soon, is to allow for those discussions to continue to happen even offline. And people could ask the community, yeah, how do I begin this thing? Where do I find this? The speaker's question is a great example. How can I find does anyone know a speaker that I could invite to a webinar that I'm hosting? And so, again, it's really meant to allow for that exchange of information so that people have a single place, one place they can go to ask the community for advice and for recommendations.
wonderful? I want to come to that the offline
Mhm,
thing you mentioned in a second, but before we get there, you mentioned the groups space. What
mhm.
I think it's not quite live yet, but that's coming. What's that's going to look like? Just briefly, what that's going to look like.
Yeah, absolutely. So this has been the plan from the beginning was to have a groups space on the platform. What this means is users could join groups that are dedicated to specific topics of interest,
Mhm.
and or they could also submit requests to create their own groups. And these would operate in a very similar fashion to Facebook groups, where again, users can create the group, invite others to join the group. We would have moderators for the groups to allow for discussions. They'd be able to share files or resources within the group and really just help to foster and spark conversations around specific topics. And so we have both the forums, which are live and currently can be used, but we also have the groups, which again are meant to be more small space dedicated to specific topics. But those will be coming within the next probably 4 to 6 months, I think.
Okay, terrific. And then we have the library.
Mhm.
I have a couple specific questions on that, but just briefly, from your perspective, what the library has to offer folks who will be visiting that site.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we were thinking about the platform, what was determined would be really beneficial was a one-stop shop for green chem education resources. Now, this could include lab experiments, so examples of greener labs that you could do for a high school classroom or for a first-year Gen Chem course or a second-year organic chemistry course. So the library is meant to be a searchable database of all types of green chemistry education materials. Lab experiments is just one example. There are also lecture slides, there are exam questions and answer banks, there are in-class activities, there's case studies. So all of the above, as well as journal articles too. So what we do in the library is we can point out to existing journal articles that might be of interest. So the goal was to have a sort of, again, a consolidated library that could allow for users to search through any of the existing educational materials, not only in the database, which we host, but also available through external links to elsewhere on the internet, and really making it a lot easier for people to find the things that they need.
Yeah, and I saw you have it sorted both by individual materials
Mhm.
as well as sort of the providers who are in sort of individual providers who are putting, sort of sub libraries of content onto the site, which is interesting. And the one thing I guess I want people to leave here with an appreciation for before we move to the next thing that I think is pretty cool with the library that is the breadth of offerings. In other
Mhm.
words, as you said, there are journal articles. So for, folks, highly technical, written for a technical audience, pieces on green chemistry research. But and then at all points in between, educational materials for graduate, undergraduate, high school, and K through 12. Um, I saw some very accessible public facing, excuse me, pieces there. I think one, forgive me, I don't have it pulled up, but I think it was, like, can can our food containers be made of
Right.
biodegradable materials?
Hmm.
As an example, it was a easy to understand for anyone piece that introduces some of the concepts of green chemistry. But I guess my point, somewhat clumsily made, was is a wonderful range in terms
Hmm.
of the accessibility of these materials to anyone coming into the site. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things we wanted to make sure was we're covering the breadth of content from elementary level. So,
Hmm.
students and kids who don't know what a molecule or an atom is, right? They've never seen
Right.
that before, and it's too early for them to really be getting into those things, generally speaking, all the way up to, upper undergraduate as well as even graduate level content where it's really like in-depth organic chemistry transformations or, creating quantum dots, in an inorganic lab. So really, yes, you're right. It's a full breadth of things. And what I do want to emphasize is it's a community-driven platform. So not only is Beyond Benign bringing in a lot of our resources into the new library, and we've been, we've had many resources that we've co-developed with faculty and community members over the years. They were based in our existing website, Beyond Benign's website. We've now migrated them and started migrating them to the new GCTLC. But in addition to that, community members can contribute their own content to the library too. And that's a very important part of it is we want it to be a community-driven library, allowing users to add in their own things that they find along the way that they've found very useful in their teaching, or that they think might be of benefit to other educators who are trying to do the same. So really that collective action together to bring about a library space that's going to be very beneficial for everyone.
Fantastic. You've mentioned the keyword and where I wanted to take this next, which is community.
Hmm.
And that it is not at all an accident. I think that's the last word in the title of this thing, right? The Green Chemistry Teaching and Learning Community,
Yep.
not resource, not hub, not, website, whatever else you could call it.
Right.
Um, I have a couple of questions about that, that lead to some of the content on the site, but the idea of community as a foundational piece to this. Can you speak to that from Beyond Benign's perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So over the years, Beyond Benign has worked closely with educators, again, at all different levels, so elementary, high school, and university, college level too. And throughout all that time, what we've come to realize is the power of transformation really happens through community building. And we've been reading up a lot on things like communities of practice. So these are groups of individuals that come together around a common theme and work together to help make a change. And they do this by sharing resources, by sharing best practices, by sharing information. So what we realized is, Beyond Benign, while we have developed a lot of resources over the years, what we've also really done is helped to contribute to this community practice, and it's grown quite a lot over the years. And we are, of course, not the only ones participating in that. Many others, the ACS Green Chemistry Institute, many of the university green chemistry centers, Berkeley, Yale, etc., they've all also been contributing to this community over time, and it's grown quite a lot. But again, it's all around the same sort of philosophy, which is why do we teach green chemistry? Why do we feel it's important bringing it into education? And there is that common sense of driven passion and purpose around that intent, and that helps to motivate community members to want to join, and then ultimately to make changes in how they teach chemistry to bring
Yeah,
about more of a lens of green chemistry. So from the very beginning, this platform, what we really wanted to do was instill those values into the platform. And working with our leadership committee, we established things like the mission and vision, the core values, which we felt were very important, and especially creating a sense of belonging. That was something that our committee felt was critical. And we worked very hard with them. We established a smaller subcommittee to talk about diversity, equity, belonging, and respect. And that really helped create the foundation for everything we did moving forward. So that sense of belonging is very important to us, and we want to make sure that everyone feels welcome in the platform and that they have a space to express their voice and their sort of perspective and share ideas amongst each other.
Yeah. And I think how that plays out on the site is really cool. This you mentioned earlier the idea of take that conversation offline.
Right.
This community aspect of the resource here, the website, I think is really cool because it's you there's a directory of people who have signed on as members of this community there, and
Mhm.
which means that, and you can search it by state and by organization and by expertise, so that folks coming into this, if you're sitting in Minnesota or California or Connecticut or wherever, um, or other places around the world, you can, who's near me, who's doing what, like
Right.
there, and it's not just sort of then sit there and read about it. There are now then opportunities to connect with these human beings, to
Mhm.
to get their emails or their and as you say, take it offline. I
Right.
guess my point being, I think it's not a static endpoint of someone's path into learning more or adopting green chemistry. It is a stepping off point to
Right.
gather information and take it further, which I think is really, really cool. And I think again, it's very powerful, honestly, whether folks are students or industry members looking for partners, or researchers to help, folks looking for grant opportunities, all the things we mentioned earlier. I think again, the idea that you can go there not as an endpoint, but as a touchstone, a launch pad for new connections, meeting new people,
Right.
building new collaborations, etc.
Yeah.
I don't want I don't want to be overselling it, but I do think it's really exciting and an interesting, because as someone who does the work I do, the number of times I'm looking for information on the web and you hit that sort of dead end, and maybe
Right.
you see a person's name and something about them, but there's no more, you have to work really hard to take it to the next step. And I think you guys are making it really easy to take it to the next step. And that next step is where it's people working with people, and that's the important stuff.
Right. Yeah, well, we're trying our best.
Yeah,
But, we that is the goal. Yeah,
yeah,
and in the many conversations we've had in the past, and we did focus groups and surveys, and, we got a lot of feedback from the community saying what we really need is a single place, like, one place, bring the community together. A lot of people felt like while green chemistry was being done, at least in education, in a lot of different places, it was very siloed, and people were not there weren't enough opportunities to connect together. So the GCTLC was meant to help break down those barriers and make connections between those silos. And as you said, being able to take the conversation offline, not just by connecting through the platform and then, having additional email conversations outside of it, but also the opposite when you have an in-person event like a conference and you have a green chemistry specific session on education and you say, wow, there were so many great things here. I'd really love to continue connecting. Often after the conference, most people don't see each other till the next conference. So finding a chance to be able to continue having those conversations in an online space is really one of the places where we want the GCTLC to help facilitate more of that networking and communication. So,
thank you. That's an important point. You're right. Not just like go to the GLC TLC and leave and then leave it, but that it also is that hub for a brewing conversations, the
mhm,
sparks of ideas happening there on the site itself. So
right.
thank you for the reminder. You also mentioned something that I don't think I mentioned earlier, which is in the forum. Other things are lists of events, conferences, and
Yes.
other events that are happening.
Yes.
Um,
Yep.
but I think we've given folks, I hope, an interesting idea of what this thing's all about, and encourage folks to go check it out. If you're at all interested, either again, you're coming into green chemistry new, and trying to figure out what's out there, who's out there, what's possible, or you're already far along the path, you're an expert in the field, and want to just be tied in, tapped in to more people in the field, or share your ideas, share your expertise. Obviously, would encourage folks to check it out. Jonathan, my final question to you, I guess, is sort of, now that it's launched. I know it was a lot of hard work to get it launched. Now that it is launched, what are you most excited about in watching it go forward, or what are your hopes for the future as this thing plays out?
So we know, even just after launching officially early last week, we've already seen a massive increase in the number of users coming in and a really strong interest in this platform. So we're very excited about that. We have over 400 users from across 40 countries. And so I think that touches on something really important, which is the international global movement around wanting to be more sustainable, wanting to bring more green chemistry into education, and helping to transform what students are learning, but also how they're learning about it, right? And what are the types of decisions that they make. I think that's going to make the most powerful impact, not only on our future, but also the future of all generations to come. So I think that's very important. I think the platform is also in a perfect place to be able to make stronger connections between different sort of nodes or points within the community. So, for example, making stronger ties between secondary, so high school level, as well as higher education. That's always been a point of sort of constant discussion. But I think the platform can really help facilitate that. What do students learn in high school? What can they learn university level? And university to industry connections too. So what are some of the things that industry could learn about that's happening in academia, and vice versa? What is it that students are learning but they need to learn that's happening in industry in order for them to better develop the skills they'll need once they graduate and move into the workforce? So I think there's so many really exciting potential benefits that this platform is going to bring and is already bringing, as we're seeing in the early days. So we really can't wait for what's next for it, and I think there's going to be a lot of very exciting things in the future.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Jonathan. I really appreciate your time in helping us sort of get a peek at this. And I would encourage the folks watching this to go check it out. It's again, if you're an expert in the field or kind of coming in new, there's a lot of potential there, a lot of promise there, and I think the theme, of course, a lot of connections to be made, community to join to help learn, to learn from, and all those wonderful exchanges. Again, Jonathan, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure. Thanks so much, James.